Welcome back, listeners, to The Mindful Journey. This is the space where we explore the inner pathways to resilience, healing, and also authentic living. I'm your host, Sana, and today's episode, listeners, it's deeply, deeply special. We are joined by Greg Vorst and Michael Nolan, the co founders of Embodied Recovery, which is a transformational treatment center in Silicon Valley. Now, let me introduce a bit about Craig and Michael to all of you listeners. Aren't just leaders in the field of recovery, they are true guides for anyone seeking a deeper, more embodied way to heal and thrive. Now, with decades of combined experience in therapy, recovery work, and spiritual practices like Sundo, which is a Korean Taoist tradition of breath work and movement, they have created a unique approach that blends psychology, spirituality, and also embodiment. So, today in this episode of Mindful Journey, we are going to dive how mindfulness and embodiment they support recovery and resilience, not just in addiction and mental health, but in everyday life. So, this conversation is definitely going to be honest, compassionate, and also packed with tools you can start using right away. So, with that, Greg and Michael, welcome to the show. And I'm really, really honored to have both of you with us today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We're so happy to be with you and with all of the listeners.
Brilliant, brilliant. So, Greg and Michael, let's focus on embodiment. Mindfulness, of course, it's not only a buzzword, but there's definitely a very positive you know uh, perspective discussions around mindfulness in the wellness in professional and personal lives as well. So, talking about embodiment, you say that it's a cornerstone of healing. Why is it so essential, and how does it actually support recovery and healing in a way that traditional talk therapy might not?
Mm, yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah, I guess to maybe lead it off, it's the embodiment component isn't. I guess the claim isn't that um, embodiment practices will allow someone to heal because talk therapy won't. And I'm not saying that that was your claim that talk therapy is less effective. It's more like when we begin to integrate all of these elements of the mindfulness practices, the daily embodiment practice, with the psychotherapy, the creative expression, and our group work. There's this synergy that happens that really allows for people to feel more aware of their thought processes, aware of their emotions, aware of their physical body. But just as a foundation, the embodiment practice really helps to regulate someone's nervous system. So if I've been experiencing addiction and mental health issues, and I say I'm ready to get some help, and I go into a therapy office, I'm going in with the same system that's been so um, uh, damaged by my way of living up to this point, that I'm hoping some cognitive shift will occur in this talk therapy interaction, whereas the inclusion of a somatic practice or embodiment practice really takes time to settle one's nervous system enough to be prepared for some of the deeper therapy.
Hmm.
Greg might have some other thoughts on that. I kind of ran away with that.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, maybe I would just add too that when somebody's really in a heightened state of struggle with mental health challenges or addiction challenges, there's usually a very low level of awareness of oneself and a kind of severing of the connection with oneself. And that might be on really gross levels. So, like, I might not be very aware of my physical sense of being. I might be very divorced from my emotions, and maybe even unclear about how I'm thinking, and perhaps how some of the thinking patterns that I'm engaged in can can really cause distress in my life. And then at a deeper layer, I'm also divorced from the truth of my being, like my soul or true self, whatever you want to call that. And so we're looking to create practices, be they of embodiment kind or mindfulness, and usually those are often yoked together in some way. But we're looking to engage in practices which have the effect of bringing me back to myself, little by little, beginning to train myself to be in myself, and then make that experience of being in myself very rewarding in time, in time. But often along the way, I have to grow up my capacity to have tolerance for difficulty and challenge and so forth and so on. But as I engage in that practice more daily, I begin to experience a radiance and a connection to my feelings and the felt sense of my body and so forth and so on. So it's kind of foundational to help get one back in touch with themselves, so that then we can do more deep therapeutic work, both emotionally and cognitively.
Hmm. Yeah, I think both of your perspectives, they definitely make sense, and they are powerful, and and this is to both of you. Some people, they feel that mindfulness and embodiment practices can feel abstract, especially early in recovery. When survival, it feels like the priority, like
Mm.
we need immediate fixes in there or solutions.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
how do you make these practices accessible for someone who's just trying to make it through the day?
Yeah, that's a great question.
The strategy that we've utilized is creating a treatment center.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So, yeah, but it's a great point. I think that when people get to a certain place in their life where they're recognizing the way that they've been living has been um, damaging or separating them from the people that they love, um, we see a couple different types of people. We see those that say, I have a very full life and I need help that will fit into the busyness of my schedule. And so if you could just give me some books to read and some ideas to mull over while I'm living my life, hopefully that will help. And then we have those that say, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Nothing that I've done so far is working. And so I'm willing to make the investment of my time into a process like this. And so we want to, we're certainly aware um, that if what we told people on at the beginning was, hey, you're probably not going to feel better for a while. This is going to be difficult and arduous. And, hopefully by the end of your treatment episode, you'll feel a little bit better. It would not be inspiring or attractive. And it's also not the truth. And so, what's great about the Sundo practice in the treatment setting is that after just a couple practices, people can start to feel a real sense of relaxation, of calm, of grounding. But it's not just the Sundo practice, it's the community. It's being held by a group of people that are understanding, compassionate, available to the struggles that they're coming in with. And so to have that community, to have that practice, we obviously have our psychiatrist and nurse practitioner to take care of any physical health needs. And so it really is this balance of trying to support someone's more urgent demands more quickly so that again we can create enough space to begin working on some of the longer standing issues over the course of time. um, I don't know, what do you?
Yeah, I would just say too that it's not uncommon that people come in such distress uh, that it can almost feel like that there's not a place to begin a journey because somebody's in such a heightened state. And in our treatment days, we begin the morning with the practice. And there's
Yeah.
something really special about everybody in the community joining in that practice together. It almost makes it a very normal affair when people come in. But it's not uncommon that we'll see somebody who's very dysregulated, who has a very low buy-in, that if they just begin to practice with us in a short while, they begin to feel quite improved. And more than that, they begin to learn the tools that they can use on a daily basis that
Mhm.
that will translate to better results in their living. So it becomes something that's really incredibly empowering for individuals who are willing to give it a shot, to try it out, and to put their effort into it. And thankfully, we have the technology within our bodies. We've been created in such a way that once we understand the process and the technology within our body, we can begin to harness it to create really good feelings.
No, I second that. I second that. In fact, our body and minds, they are such beautiful. Sometimes I think it's a kind of that natural tech embedded inside of it.
Mm.
Uh, in fact, for the fact that one thing that I know for sure that when we are having a good sleep,
Mm.
uh, that REM 4 state sleep, that it's the time when our body is healing. And I think through practices, through embodiment, through mindfulness, it's like giving permission to our body and mind to embrace healing.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I absolutely agree with that on that, Craig and Michael. And I'll definitely come to Sundo in the later part of the conversation. But before that, Michael,
Yeah.
uh, you have shared that true recovery is about more than abstinence. It's about living a purposeful and joyful life. That's, of course, a beautiful, beautiful statement. So, how do mindfulness and embodiment help people build that deeper sense of resilience?
Wow, what a big question.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'd just like to say when it comes to recovery from addiction, and I'm an addict in recovery myself, and so many people can come into recovery, and uh, addiction to substances can be very concretized. It's very apparent when I'm under the influence versus when I'm not. And so many people can come into a treatment setting or recovery imagining, as long as I don't drink, as long as I don't use my drug of choice, then I'm doing well. And it certainly would create a huge improvement for people to put down their drugs of choice and no longer use them. But what I've seen over the past 17 years of my own recovery is that abstinence from drugs and alcohol is just a necessary prerequisite for me to begin doing the work that allows me to reconnect with my authentic self. And so, in this space of abstinence, I've spent so much time identifying with myself as the user, as the one under the influence, as the one that's been hiding out and manipulating and lying and trying to get my way to get to the next fix, if you will. And now that I'm not using, I can feel very um, lost. I don't know
Mhm.
who I am. I'm still living out a lot of old behavioral patterns. And so to be in a space where those behavioral patterns, thought patterns, and reactions to life are held accountable, I get to learn more about myself and how to really create the life for myself that I want. And what I find in a community like the 12-step community or an embodied recovery, we're really trying to get people back to an awareness of their own sense of values and purpose and connection and love so that they can make the investments into those areas of their life that bring them so much meaning. And so to keep going back to using and saying, I can just keep a little bit of it, it has this marvelous way of demolishing all of this wonderful work that I can do in recovery. And so it's not just abstain as long as you can and you're doing well. It's if you can abstain, you can get to a place where you can now pick up the paintbrushes and create on this blank canvas of recovery that you've been given.
Mm.
So it's really a creative force that comes upon one in recovery that we can feel so excited about. So
Yeah, the lives that are born out of this process, it's just so extraordinary. to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah. It's basically no longer living a life of reactivity, compulsivity,
Survival.
survival, right? It's really getting people into a place where they can see the life that I experience is the life that I choose,
Yeah.
which is really exciting.
And, Sana, just one other thought in this question, which would just be that the mindfulness practices and the embodiment practices, those can really give me enough groundedness and enough loving presence so that I can witness myself. I can see myself in my day to day living, and that allows me to be really cognizant of where I'm living from and the recovery journey to really grow, I need to begin a process of seeing myself and seeing myself when I am not doing something that's constructive. When I am acting from a place that's contrary to my recovery, I want to be able to be aware of that and witness it so that I can turn myself around so that I can undo that. And the more quickly that I can do that, the more quickly I become aligned with my life's purpose and get back on track and back into those vitalizing energies. And all of that is built on the degree to which I have awareness of the way in which I'm living. I need to be able to watch and see myself. And that's a meta awareness. That's not just me experiencing life, but there's a part of me that's witnessing myself as I make choices, as I go about my living. And then that gives me all kinds of skill and capacity in directing myself in the avenues that are most rewarding. But being able to witness in that way is a practice. I need to grow that up. And usually when I enter into treatment for addiction or mental health, I'm very steeped in the energies of denial. So I'm not actually aware. I'm not seeing the consequences. I'm not seeing where a choice will lead. I'm not even aware that I made a choice that's injurious to me. And we need to grow up the faculty of seeing that so that we can be more skilled at choosing.
Yeah, that's really practical. Really, really practical. Especially that you mentioned about denial. And especially often in adverse situations, like I'm just talking in general sense that we kind of deny the fact that there's something happening which is not favorable to us. Our brain is trying to save us from those. It's mapping it as a dangerous situation, and that's why we call it as the fight or flight moment that
Mhm.
we face. Um, so that's a really practical perspective on this. And Greg, you often teach about the nervous system's role in recovery.
Mhm.
Uh, can you break down how embodiment
Mm.
helps regulate the nervous system, and why does that matter so much for healing from addiction or trauma?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, wonderful. So, so if you think about it broadly, uh, generally when people, let's say, they haven't done a lot of work, therapeutic or let's say meditative or embodiment practices, their window of tolerance and awareness might be quite condensed. So, like if something happens in life, it's experienced as too stimulating, and they can go into, just as you were naming, like fight or flight, or they may even be habitually in a place like that, which can be quite exhausting. Conversely, they could be in a place of freeze or a place that's numbed out that if we think about the other side of the experience where people are overstimulated, they're feeling flooded by feelings. But if I'm numbed out or frozen, I might be out of touch. And so, oftentimes, before people have developed enough sense of groundedness and self possession, they're usually pivoting back and forth between those two destinations. And the problem with each of them is there isn't really a good conduit for me to be in touch with life and remain self-regulated. So what I'm needing in my healing journey, and particularly so with recovery, and this is true for trauma, because when we work with individuals that have experienced trauma, they're most often going to go through periods of re-experiencing deep and intense feeling. And to do that in a way that's constructive, meaning I don't just shut down or get flooded, I need to have a sense of really solid self-possession, and I
Mhm.
need to be able to regulate my nervous system and experience I need to be trained in regulating my nervous system and experience a degree of wholeness while facing tension, while facing difficult feelings. And
Mm.
so the Sundo work that we do is marvelous for that. But there are a variety of ways that people can develop this. But what I'm looking to do is have a degree of being in touch with my experience and my feelings that's not flooded and has a degree of both being in touch and spaciousness. So I don't want
Okay.
to feel like I'm just completely overwhelmed by the feeling. I also don't want to feel like I'm spaced out and out of touch. I need to be in touch and have a degree of spaciousness, and then that's the way that I can begin to safely process, work through feelings, and really learn from my feelings as well. Because when we're so guarded against feelings, or we're so flooded by feelings, we actually can't receive the wisdom of them. They're
Mm.
too overwhelming to be integrated into my experience and my being. So we're looking for ways to be able to digest and really work with the challenge that's in life. And for that, I need to be grounded and have a real sense of self-regulation.
That makes sense, Rick. That definitely makes sense. I mean, when we are dysregulated, it can feel like that we are constantly in survival mode. Um, Talking about Sundo, because I personally I'm not aware about it. So for listeners who might not be familiar, what is Sundo and how does it help someone reconnect with themselves?
Yeah. Okay. Sundo is a lifelong learning. It's marvelous. It's built on a belt system akin to the martial arts. But in this tradition, there's no fighting. There's just increasing discipline and challenge in the meditative breathwork postures.
Okay.
But there's a very elaborate system of self-development that's within Sundo. It's comprised of it's not exactly like these disciplines, but it has a flavor of something akin to yoga,
Mhm.
calisthenics, martial arts, qigong, and even you'd probably say acupressure. And
Mhm.
that, but the main meat of it, the central aspect that we're working on is this lower abdominal style of breathing, so that the
Mm.
diaphragm goes very low and that the belly comes out. Chest is stationary. So we're seeking to move from chest breathing to lower abdomen breathing. And
Mhm.
that helps us, it helps us do a number of things. It helps us switch to parasympathetic in the relaxation response in the nervous system. It can, in time, as we develop this breathing technique, it can really help us produce serotonin, which is the sort of feeling good hormone, and then it also helps with a kind of a pause or long view when we're making decisions. And then we know, like the ancient cultures knew so well, that there's wisdom in this lower part of our body. We
Mhm.
have sayings like, I felt it in my gut, um, and so forth and so on. So there's an intelligence that's there, and modern science is now catching up to that awareness. Um, but often we're disenfranchised from it because we're so stuck in our heads. Our breath is so shallow if we're not practicing in these ways, and we're really living in our minds and disconnected from our body and our breathing. And so when we go on this journey with Sundo, little by little, we become more embodied through the embodied breath work. We live more deeply into our bodies, into the core of our being. And then we have a degree of centeredness and self possession and calm when we meet the challenges in the world.
And I'd also want to add, when I was in treatment, and for both Greg and I, having worked in a number of other treatment centers, they can teach some great skills like box breathing or the lower abdominal breathing, or they maybe do a yoga practice once a week, and so these skills that are taught as maybe emotion regulation skills are helpful. But one thing that we've just seen happen over and over again is that recovery is almost approached as a cognitive affair, and so we teach Sundo every day, and we get clients enrolled into it being a practice rather than just a skill they'll hopefully remember when
They're
life
stressed
shows
out.
up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's such a huge difference in experience for people when they try something once versus when they make it a committed daily practice. There are gifts and rewards that are experienced as the result of commitment over time versus
Yeah.
a momentary relief. And so that momentary relief can be wildly important. And so there's no putting it down. It can absolutely get people to the next day of sobriety or get through a challenge. But when I can make a commitment to this practice every day, I experience less and less of those moments that require my um, emergency response in a coping strategy,
Yeah, now I begin to thrive.
right?
Yeah.
So now recovery becomes practiced, right?
Exactly. And that's what, if I can circle back to the initial part of the conversation, it's accessible and it doesn't feel like a specific, kind of forced upon that, oh my goodness, I have to do this. It's like it's coming organically, naturally. And yes, of course, as you both said, it's a practice. Um, that's a very, very, I should say, beautiful perspective.
Thank you. I also wanted to add that we're no strangers to the resistance, the difficulty, the challenge of taking on a practice like this. So there's no expectation that someone's willingness to engage in it would lead to wonderful feelings constantly. It is something that will bring up people's own control issues, their own pushback, their own defensiveness and guardedness, and that's all part of the process.
Hmm. Absolutely. And then before I wrap up this conversation, Craig and Michael, of course, this is the mindful journey. So, um, Greg, you have been in kind of the from the scientific perspective, the psychology perspective,
Mm.
and Michael, you have been. I mean, you have had a personal recovery experience. I mean, now you are voicing that transformation. You are helping others out there along with Craig. So, um, if you both can, give us a glimpse of how it all worked out, maybe.
Uh, Meaning how we came together, or
How
uh,
exactly the empowered living came into the picture?
yeah. Um, well, I'm not sure I'm fully getting your question, but I'll speak to it just to say that when we engage in practices in this way, and Mike and I have been doing this together for the better part of 8 years now, and we're really blessed that the universe brought us together to teach and work together. But um, there's a way in which, if we do this in such a steady way, there's a power that's not our own that we begin to court, that lives in us, and it's so vitalizing, and it's in some ways it can feel miraculous or beyond each of us, that we can begin to live in from day to day. And I think there's something similar in your culture with the notion of prana. In
Yep.
From Korea, it's ki. Uh, but when we can steady our mind and cultivate that ki or prana, then there's a life force that really begins to generate and live in us and as us, and our life takes on a completely different tenor, and we just begin to feel empowered in ways that we never could have known before. And then when two or more people do it together, it's magnified. And so we've experienced, virtually in every area of our life where we've been challenged, we've experienced so much growth, and there are still yet to come, areas for us, and so we just have so much confidence, given our firsthand experience of recovery and transformation, of what we can offer to individuals if they're sincere in their efforts.
That's incredibly moving. Michael, if you would like to add something to it.
Oh, um, I'm not really sure what I would add. I would just say that, as Greg mentioned, both of us have our own recovery journeys, and mine was through, multiple treatment centers in AA and 12 steps. And Greg also has worked 12 steps, and we're both. We met each other as clinicians, and so Greg was a therapist, and I was a counselor working with people in addiction treatment primarily. And so we had just both had these experiences where um, people were looking for a solution and were met with some some maybe time-tested educational materials which were really helpful, and some lovely communities. And we had both had our experiences with the benefits of daily practice, and Greg had spent a lot of time in spiritual communities. I had spent a lot of time in AA, and felt like there were these places where we could we could grow further into our connection to self, to higher power, and to this sense of living purposeful lives. And so, um, like Greg said, just from our own experiences, having worked together and having helped so many people through a process like this, we're maybe beyond confident that if people can stay grounded, patient, steady, humble, and committed to this, that the life that they're coming in saying they want so badly is so accessible. And when they move away from that because it's difficult or not happening when they want it to, or it can just be sad to see. And so we're feeling so excited about the future, about our Empowered Living teaching series, which is a collection of 12 teachings that Greg and I developed. So it's a mix of some modern psychology, ancient wisdom traditions, and some solid 12-step recovery work that's really exciting. Our Sundo practice, all of our groups are very experientially designed. And so we're just feeling excited about the next steps in this journey.
Yeah.
That's that's really, really inspiring, Greg and Michael. Really inspiring. So before we wrap up, if our listeners they would like to explore more about your Empowered Living teaching series and also the work that you are doing at Embodied Recovery, what would be the best way?
Yeah, so if they want to, they can join us on the last Friday of every month. They can find information on that teaching series on meloscenter.org. So it's M as in Mary, ELOS center.org. That'll have information about the Sundo practice that they can join in the mornings, as well as the Empowered Living teaching series. And then if they want to know more about our treatment program, they can go to embodiedrecovery.com. All of our contact information is online, and so they can reach out to us anytime.
Yeah, and at Melos, they're able to participate online in daily Sundo practice, and the teaching series is broadcast there. There's also some resources for Elixir Dance, which is another component of the embodiment transformational work we do. That's something that you have to show up in person for, but you can learn about that on meloscenter.org. And then one final thing, in October, we have a very special guest, Master Jin Mok, from the Sundo tradition. We're bringing him out from Korea, and we're doing a 4-day workshop in early October, I believe, starting October 4th. All of that's available on the website.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'll make sure to mention all the links, the details in the show notes for our listeners. And Greg and Michael, I couldn't thank both of you for sharing your wisdom, your hearts with us today. And it's definitely uh, I believe that healing it isn't about pushing through or forcing upon ourselves, fixing ourselves. It's homecoming to our bodies, our breath, and the parts of us we may have long ignored. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
Sana. This has been wonderful. We really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
totally. And to all the beautiful listeners out there, I hope you walk away with a little more hope and a few practical tools and insights for your own journey. So, to connect with Craig and Michael and explore the resources, the gifts they're sharing, just refer to the show notes along with this episode. And as always, share this with someone who might need it today. You never know how one conversation can spark the start of healing. Until next time, I am Sana, and this is The Mindful Journey. Thank you.